This is the Inquisitive Minds Podcast.
Hey, thank you for tuning in the Inquisitive Minds Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Smith. With me today, we have a man specializing in comedy, music, improv, voiceover, and audio/editing work. He's a modern-day bard from Philadelphia. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program, Paulie Stamegna.
Yeah, you got it, dude.
All
and
right.
you did the E right. That's wild.
After only practicing 10 times just now.
Stamegna, you did go. Well, it takes practice. It ain't. It's like lasagna when you think about it.
And
everybody says that fine.
I tend to think of myself as a wordsmith, but then I get excited and stumble over my words. So for today, we're going with Paulie Stags.
Paulie Stags. That's what you all can look up because I don't want you to have to deal with it.
Paulie Stags, you sound like you came directly from Brooklyn.
I got weird shit going on. Like so my dad's from Boston. I worked with a dude from Brooklyn for like years in a deli and lived with him. And then I got like a boss from outside Detroit. It all like sneaks in.
Okay.
And then like, I don't know, I can get real professional too if I have to.
So Paulie,
it's wild.
outside of all those things, I just want to give your intro. It said your stand-up leans into subjects like science, philosophy, and ancient history with an unassuming irreverence and abundant use of misdirection. He follows false logic to unexpected and hilarious conclusions. Paulie is also a music, theater, and improv instructor in Cranberry, PA. He has classical and jazz training in voice and percussion. He plays steelpan and can fake it okay on the piano.
Did I write that?
You did write that.
I did write that. That sounds pretty good.
That does sound pretty good.
Man, yeah. If anybody believes that, I'm always looking for work.
So that being said, you know, we've interacted in the stand-up world.
Yeah.
But we've never had much close conversation.
No. Which is funny because you're one of the first guys I met on the scene here, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
I rolled in, I think, the Scarps because I had done some looking.
Okay.
I came from Philly. I was like, I got to look around, kind of figure out where everything's at. And, Johnny Smith was out back, I think, chilling, and introduced himself.
Appropriate.
And, I met a couple other cats. But, when I came back, because my job gets busy seasonally with what I do, there's Johnny again. Apparently he'd had a trip, and now he's back.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Listeners know about my kerfuffle down in Texas. Where
I had no idea. I've been so, under the radar.
Yeah, man. I went down there and just threw it all away and came back, on the good road to recovery. I got over a year
dude,
clean.
You're looking good, man. I couldn't tell. I was
got
just
a new baby. Yeah.
Congrats, man.
I
That's
lost
awesome.
the teeth before a meth addiction. So it's a natural conclusion. Starting off strong. So what brought you from
Jesus.
Philly? Where'd you start stand-up?
So I started stand-up in Philly. I'd been doing improv since I was like 18. Like I started a troupe at our college because there was only a short form troupe, and me and my weird friends wanted to do like long form and get like weird with it. And we got our student advisor. We were like, who's the one guy who's never on campus? And we found the guy who would be like in the Amazon from the anthropology department. We're like, can you sign these papers when you're home? And we would do all kinds of shit that was under the radar from that dude. Like we had no overseer. We like planned it.
Where'd you go to school?
University of Delaware. That's where I'm from originally. I moved to Philly after Delaware for like work and started doing stand up on the scene there.
What brought you to Pittsburgh?
Girlfriend, actually. We moved up here together, and we're no longer together, but found a good career after COVID. I used to work at marketing at like a fish factory. I was doing like all these culinary videos.
That sounds very Philadelphia.
Yeah. I mean, it was mad Philly. It's like one of they're out here too. They're one of the biggest fish companies in like the country.
I love your accent, man. I love
thanks,
the blended
man.
accent because
It's just East Coast. Like,
you can say it. Like a person with that accent can say anything and it sounds cool. It's like what I do for work,
slinging fish.
Yeah. It all sounds like semi-threatening.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I guess that's how they say it there.
It's
not how that
I was
guy
a
says it.
fishmonger. Big deal. You want to do something? Like,
They're wild, dude. Those that's a wild crowd.
Tell me about that a little bit because
God.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
I mean, like all Italian. So I had it in, but like, I mean, it is nonstop ball busting. But on the other side of it, which was kind of what brought me there, was like they got lots of top chefs in the country buying from them because they can get things other people can't get. They've got like a lot of different parts of that market cornered. So like, I get to go into these kitchens at like, 5-star Michelin restaurants and be like shooting some guy making flounder meuniere. I learned so much about culinary, and I'd grown up watching cooking shows. And I mean, I think, just spent a lot of time in Philly trying to develop skills. Like at my regular job, I was working in retail at a big company that it rhymes with Scrapple. And I don't know if you can put two and two together, but yeah, I learned like video editing there, audio editing there. So I was like, okay, how do I make this make money? And I was like, well, let me shoot these cooking videos for my buddy's company, and then they end up hiring me. So like, it was pretty cool to be in there and like learn all these techniques, like, and you know, you gotta like get on the chef's good side. So you like you walk in there and like, yes, chef, no chef, and I act like I'm on his team, and then they start sharing stuff with you, and it's really, really cool, man. Like I feel like I can cook seafood better than any of my friends nowadays, which is pretty wicked.
I've never worked in a kitchen or been around chefs
really?
or anything like that.
Oh, I love it, man.
But the only experience I have is like watching like Gordon Ramsay stuff.
Oh God.
These chefs, temperamental?
Depends on the chef. They're all like, you know, they're artists, man.
Okay.
So like, I think the thing with them is like your deadlines are like instant. So like, there's high pressure and like lots of anger issues, which, you know, I mean, great. I'm Italian. I'm like, cool, man. He's gonna be angry for a couple minutes. I'll be like, yo, you need a couple minutes? Like, I'll come back. You know, like. So I don't know. I think that's the biggest difference between them and some of the other artists I know is like, man, that temper kicks up quick. It's a little more military, I think, you know, like, because, you know, you think about like a French kitchen, like you're reporting in. I'm like, yes, chef, no chef. Like I was saying, like, the one word answer is like that dude's running the kitchen. Like, it's like Star Trek, man. He's the captain on the bridge. Like,
I worked at a McDonald's a few times.
Oh, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I got you. We need more 10 ones and 4 ones.
Yeah, what's going on that saute line? Yeah.
So you got a background in music too.
Yeah, that's my, I guess you could say it's my trade. Yeah. I went to school for music at UD. And I studied classical voice. And I think usually, I think it was kind of like...
Forgive my ignorance for some of these questions.
What?
Classical voice, like singing?
Like opera singing, yeah. Foreign language, like, you know, classical technique. But I was always into jazz from a young age. Like from like 7th grade, I guess. I started thinking about like improv and music.
Okay.
And like I was always trying to find ways to perform, but I didn't like really put 2 and 2 together. I was like, oh, I do music, so I should go to school for music. And then I'm like doing comedy, but I'm not like thinking about like, oh, this improv thing could like fuel other stuff, you know? Like,
yeah.
So, you know, I kind of was on that music track, and then I was like, man, these opera people suck. These people are whack.
Now, when you say,
man,
because I have questions about this. Cause
yeah, ask away, man. I like informing about music.
I'm ignorant to so many different
whatever,
things.
Man.
You have training in voice and percussion. Does that mean
Correct.
drums?
Drums and percussion. So drum set was not my strongest. I played more like vibes and mallets and things like that. I play steel drum.
Okay.
So if you play percussion in like the classical world, like you got to do other stuff because there's so many gigs and orchestras. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us play jazz or have like some ethnic instrument we play or like, you know, have other skills so you can land gigs. So like the guy I studied under did a steel drum from Trinidad, or steelpan is what they call it. So I had a little of that under my belt. So, you know, you kind of do. And that's what I started with when I went to school. And I was like, ooh, this is really competitive. Like, I don't know if I'm ready for this shit. And, like, my instructor was, like, the head of the union. So, like, I was getting scared because he's telling you how gigs and auditions work. And you're like, shit, there's not a lot to go around. And I was doing better with singing. So, like, I was getting parts. And I was like, I should probably go path of least resistance here. And I think the work ethic from percussion going into like a vocal area where people I think are a little more vain, a little more concerned, maybe not practicing as hard at younger ages was a good service to me. It was like a smart move.
Now, when you get in this and you're doing this singing, is it like ensembles? Is it solo?
Everything.
Okay.
So, you know, you're required to be in a choir. This is interesting. I like the questions you got because I don't think people really think about what a music department does, you know, and like what my job day to day would be to learn.
There's a charade
in a structured environment
that I like to pull over people's eyes that I'm intelligent.
Well, you're asking questions, so that's good.
I don't know a lot of things. There's so much I don't know.
Or if you're hungry and you're putting it together, I mean, you're intelligent. Like,
okay,
yeah.
Oh, we'll
that's
take
an
that.
exposure issue. That's not a that's and I don't know. I think that's a problem if people judge that. Like, you know, like if you're sitting there learning, like.
Yeah, I mean, the show is
like,
Inquisitive Minds, and I started it because I like to learn, but
there you go.
I don't like to learn from like books as much.
You bring a person in.
I want to talk to people.
Okay,
I want you to tell me, you know, your people's
don't
individual
fact check
experience.
everything I say because
honestly, what you said, the dish you named,
which
one,
the flounder meuniere.
That's I don't even know what that is.
You
Like I know
what it
flounder is a fish.
So like you know when you see people butter based and stuff.
No.
You probably seen those videos on like Instagram. They got a steak and they put like They tilt the can and they keep putting it with the spoon.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's French technique. It's meunière, and you do that with a fish. And you sear it at a real high temperature, and then you keep the butter going, and then it gets a nice crust, and then you have this nice fish with like a buttery, crispy.
I grew up so poor.
Yeah, me too, man. I just happened to be working where
we never had any exposure to any of that. So when people say words like that, I'm like, okay, it's a food of some type. And that's the thing too. I don't eat seafood.
Oh, okay. I feel
maybe
a lot of people
outside
don't.
Of tuna. I
a
don't
lot
eat
of people
seafood.
don't. My family, my dad's side is originally from like a coastal area of Italy, so like we always had fish around.
Okay.
And they're from New England, so like lobster. My grandma would let us play with the lobster before she cooked them. She'd have them like on a trash bag on the floor. So there's pictures of me holding up octopus. So for some reason, fish has always been in my life. And then kind of getting into that place where like we're eating shit that even my crazy parents and grandparents wouldn't be eating. Cracking open uni, they're like, here's the balls of a cod, like.
What's an uni?
Uni is like a sea urchin, like that orange shit they put on sushi. So yeah, like I don't know, like I never had exposure to that stuff either, but like all of a sudden they're like, hey, this chef's coming, we're cracking over caviar, you need to know about caviar, so eat caviar. Isn't that wild? Like,
that's
like
crazy.
Thousands of dollars in caviar just so we're educated to like talk to chefs, like just here, eat this, learn about it. Such a cool way to spend an afternoon.
I'm thankful to the internet because it exposes you to a lot. Because growing up, I had this idea of caviar, of just some crazy rich people food.
Yeah.
And then you find out it's, what it is.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind. And then I'm watching.
You ever see people milking them and
harvesting
see
them?
Yeah, that's wild.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
It's
crazy.
insane.
And they apparently do like shit like, so the market was real wild, I guess, in like the Black Sea or something out, near Russia.
Okay.
Right? Like, so like they overfished it and you can't get, I think, the original fish that you're supposed to get it from. So they have all these other breeds that like mimic it, like Osetra, I think is what it's called. They're all sturgeon. Mm-hmm. If you ever look up a sturgeon, it looks like a prehistoric fish. They're
big
crazy.
Fish.
Yeah. So like they have all these other ones that they do with now, and they're like different grades, different colors, different tastes that go with them.
Am I remembering wrong? But is beluga?
Yeah. Well, beluga is a whale, but it's also a caviar.
That's what I was asking. It comes from the whale?
No, it comes from the sturgeon.
Oh,
yeah, it's like the name of the caviar.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
like a brand name.
I'm not like super educated with this, but like I remember there's like Osetra, there's that, and usually they're coming from sturgeon. And I think you can't call it caviar if it's a like champagne. You can't. Look it up, okay? I'm giving you enough to figure it out here. All right, that's what I did when I needed to pass the test.
My palate is so unsophisticated that as a younger man,
it's roe. If you get like trout or like those orange ones, like the flying fish stuff you get on sushi.
Okay,
that's roe. It's not caviar. But it's the same shit. It's fish eggs.
My palate is so unsophisticated. As a younger man, if I would have known better, I
you just make me look smarter.
Well, I would have went somewhere like Ruth Chris and been like, "Sir, give me your finest Salisbury steak."
Yeah. How are your mashed potatoes today?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me about these dinner rolls.
I love that shit too, man. Like this is kind of cool because it's like I didn't grow up like here's your caviar and your Melba toast, but like. Mm-hmm. It's like cool. That's a neat thing to be able to like show up if you have to go to some dinner party and like fucking this caviar sucks.
See, that's the thing. I would have no idea.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I could go that far, but I could make a good show of it.
I was at a good friend's wedding, Marcus Cox.
I think I know. Is he a stand-up?
Stand-up.
Okay.
He also runs MC Auto Detailing.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Yeah. Great guy. I was at his wedding, and I was there, and they passed around hors d'oeuvres.
Okay.
And just me not wanting to be rude, I took an hors d'oeuvre. There was 2 little pieces on it. Didn't know what it was. Threw the first one in my mouth. It was a crab cake.
Awesome. That's a win.
Well, it wasn't a win because I don't like crab cakes.
Oh, you don't like them?
It was the first time I ever had crab.
So you didn't go into shock or anything?
Well, I ate it and I swallowed it. I was like, okay. Let's be polite.
Okay.
The next one was a scallop.
Oh, you went from like level 1 to level 2 right away.
And I almost choked in my mouth.
That's hilarious.
At the time, we had face masks.
Let me ask you this, because these two are like fish that are like popular in the United States because we don't like fishy taste and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you'll get sardines in Europe.
Okay.
But like you need to be like me to eat them over here. Okay. Like you got to have a little olive complexion to be looking for that stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's wild. Even coming to Pittsburgh from Philly, like you guys got a good Italian representation, but like the things I'm looking for, like I got an aisle of that stuff. I took it for granted. Mm-hmm. Like I come here and I'm like, where's the There's only one brand. It's not like what?
I hadn't
So wait,
realized that.
With your shellfish, was it too fishy tasting, or like what is it that bugs you about it?
It was just everything.
The texture.
The texture.
The scallop texture must have like
The
been wild.
surprise
Of
it.
just like you didn't expect
This
it.
is true. I was making a joke about the Salisbury steak, but I went to what I didn't know was some type of fundraiser for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
That's a long story. But I was there, and they were offering hors d'oeuvres.
Okay.
And they offered me scallops. And I took one. At that time, I didn't eat it, but I thought it was a potato.
Scallop potato.
Yeah, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And this was maybe 15 years ago. But I was embarrassed once at the time my wife was like, "That's fish." I was like, "Oh, I had no idea."
Yeah,
It's like, "Oh, they're passing around potatoes?"
Yeah, people like, I mean, when you don't like it, that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing,
It's not
like-
like a, hey, you can get a custom. I think there's a lot of people that just like can't do seafood for some reason.
The
Like,
small things I've tried,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of. Like I've tried salmon,
Okay.
just not a fan.
No, I hear you.
Some guy gave me some catfish. I think that
Yeah.
was my phone because I'm an idiot.
That's fine.
Some guy gave me some catfish,
Yeah.
and I tried it, but it's like, what is the appeal? I didn't enjoy it.
I'm not a catfish fan, but
I feel like we don't
I
have
like
to live
the
in
bellies.
survival
They
anymore.
fry up the bellies. We call them spicy fish johns at the
Yeah,
shop.
yeah.
Oh God, dude, that's crispy, fishy. You'd hate it.
So tell me about your.
So you were asking me about like the day to day at school.
Yeah.
Right. So like and ensembles and like what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. So like I said I was doing choirs. Like you have to do a choir. But like what else are you curious about? Because like what the
Well, what type of
Scheduling
like
kinda-
shows did you
Okay.
do? Like, was it?
So at the university, we were building an opera program. Kind of when I got there, they'd hired some new voice instructors who had like experience in that field. There's kind of two kinds of classical voice. There's like art song, which would be like some famous German poet wrote a set of poems, and then some famous German, like I don't know, composer like Schubert might set those all to music for a singer to sing with a piano. And like you could see these concerts or find tons of like classical singers interpreting them differently with different pianists, and they all get their own take on it. It's really like artistic stuff, but they're not always like the most powerful voices. They can be really expressive and cool, but opera is like a different kind of thing, and it takes like a little bit of a different kind of technique. And so we were putting on operas in English. So we did the Magic Flute in English, and then we did a famous like English opera that's maybe kind of music theater called Street Scene, about a murder that happens in New York at the turn of the century. Pretty neat play, but it's like, ooh, am I listening to Puccini or am I listening to jazz? This is like really mixed up and high level. So they kind of put it in the opera repertoire. So things kind of like cross over. But I did musicals too in high school because I was like, oh, I want to be on stage.
That was my
looks
next
cool.
question.
Yeah, so I did those. I did a few outside in the community. And that's actually my job now, is directing those for people who are up in this area and maybe don't have experience or have just gotten out of school and looking to build their resume. So I have like a teaching program where we do a show to teach you how it works and get you kind of thinking about it. So maybe you can go audition for a community theater show if that's your thing, or like maybe you're looking at auditions and you're trying to amp up your skills. So that's kind of my gig now, is like running that, which is wild. Like it's crazy how it's more about organization and like dealing with people and stuff. But
yeah. And how did you get into teaching? Like, it's just a natural progression.
I mean, I did training at Apple. I've always been like if you're a musician, you're kind of a teacher unless you're like the highest level. And even then, you probably have people who are studying under you. It's kind of part of the DNA, I think. But when I came here, I'd been laid off from the fish company because COVID. You know, no slight to them. They lost their restaurant accounts, so shit
Yeah, it
got
happens.
weird. So they didn't have like the same room for their marketing department. And looking for work in Pittsburgh because we're moving here, and I happened to find a couple studios. One of them was on the phone, didn't seem to be working out. This one, a lady called me up right away, and it looked like they were building a program, and I was kind of like the right fit. I knew the right questions to ask, and I kind of was like, okay, I can learn this by being in here. And they're like, we're looking to do a full adult show like we do with our kids' shows, which is how we get most of our students. And it just kind of worked, and then it just kept growing. And they're like, hey, we need an improv program. There's kids here who are more into that kind of thing. So now I got an advanced improv class. I got 2 adult shows a year, full studio.
These are up in
students.
Cranberry?
Yeah, up in Cranberry, yeah.
What are your rates on improv classes?
What's it rate? I don't, tell you the truth, I got my rates. I kind of work like a bit of a freelancer almost.
Okay.
So it's like whatever we're doing, it's for kids right now. I might be offering more adults classes. But I'll tell you, after doing it in Philly and knowing how less the rates are than they are in New York for the same training, our rates are way better than that.
Oh, I'm sure.
If you're trying to take your kid to a class, like it's definitely reasonable.
I took some improv classes with Woody Drennan.
I don't know Woody Drennan.
Is
he around here?
Yeah, he's around here.
What is he, arcade or?
No, he had his own studio, but I think he's shut down for a little while right now.
Yeah,
but
things get weird with that.
Hell of a improv teacher.
Yeah, so you did some improv.
Yes.
Do you use that at all when you do stand up, or that kind of thinking when you write?
I think improv drastically helped my stand up.
How so?
Especially at shows, just being quicker. You know, dealing with hecklers or something.
Yeah, you have
unexpected.
like a method for like chaos. It's like if this comes to me, I could do these 12 things, and all of them are good ideas if I follow the path. You're not worried about the joke anymore.
Thinking with an improv mind kept me on my toes, being able to adjust, like not knocking me off my center.
Yeah.
And honestly, it helped me in life too, like with conversation or with whatever.
Oh, right.
Just
I mean, job interviews after
anything.
that were like way easier. I just felt so comfortable.
Once
in the
you can
room,
train your brain to start going boom, 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 and not worried about what linear thought process.
Right. I think I watch a lot of stand-ups try and shut down hecklers. And it's very aggressive and very to the point. And like from an acting standpoint, I want to be having a conversation. I want to be listening as much as I'm talking. So if my scene partner is not doing their job in the first place, I got to amp that up. I mean, if my heckler is doing that, I think it's like, hey, I've got to get into that conversation enough to like be in control of that conversation. You know, like I don't know that there's like a right amount of how long to do that for. But if you approach it from there, you could be more interesting. Like it's just fuck you. This is my time. What's that going to get you? Less time.
My stand-up,
like it's not
pre-improv.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do is tell somebody to shut the fuck up. And I would try and make it funny, but a lot of times it was just very aggressive.
Well, yeah, it just comes out like it's like, oh, like I don't know what I'm doing, and no slight to you, but like you look like you're lashing out up there, like you don't have control anymore.
And after
that should be the button after you fucked them up.
Yeah. After improv. Crowd work drastically improved, dealing with hecklers. It was to a point where they didn't ruin shows.
I feel like I do better with that, and man, when I'm back after these shows, like I'm almost thinking of leaning more into that on stage.
I don't know.
It's tough. It's tough in a stand-up realm to do it, but the ones who are doing it are just stellar.
I don't know if I necessarily have my finger on the pulse of stand-up right now, but it seems like a lot of clips coming out are more and more just crowd work. And
Maybe that's the best part of their set.
Yeah. And I've seen like more crowd work oriented comics. I'm not slighting anybody. Whatever works for you. It's just interesting, I guess.
But even then, it's like you see the formula. They're leading them. You know, they're looking for it. I like it when it's more spontaneous. Like, you know, I think that's where the magic comes from. Because then the failures are just as funny because they're watching you do what they would do and it's relatable. It's like that's what it's coming from to me, and it's all like what do you want in this situation? It's all acty shit. You watch Always Sunny ever?
Oh yeah.
Do you listen to the podcast?
No, I didn't know there was a podcast.
Out. Yeah, they're all Juilliard trained, so like the wackiness they're dealing with is so grounded in like acting technique, and it's all about like what do you want? Like if I see ravioli, it's not that I want the ravioli. I'm hungry. It's like base urges. So if you can like track it back and that defines the character and you're like, you know, I think you could do that on stage too. You might be more concerned with what they want though, because they obviously want it. They're yelling out at your show. You could play with that.
I mean, let's be honest. Stand-up's very egocentric. Like you have to think somewhat of yourself to get on stage. And I feel like
or be thinking about yourself a lot, maybe much more negative.
And I feel like a lot of comics, when they do that, you know, whole routine to shut the fuck up, they're approaching it from you're ruining my time instead of let's work this out for everybody.
You need to like let people know it's your time without letting them know that. Because you're right, it comes off as ego, and then it's like I don't want to watch someone with ego. You got to hide that.
Yeah.
Even if you got it, you know, it's like that.
Unless it works. There's a few comics, you know, I'm not talking about the scene either. I'm just saying in general.
I know you talk. Yeah, like you can have like the jerk persona, like a Steve Martin or like I guess Jeselnik, you know, like and just kind of be a little more like smooth and I'm
Daniel
better than
Tosh.
you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like and I think it works with the right person, the right face, the right attitude.
Yeah.
But if you're confronting the heckler, I mean, like those guys we're watching, they're not dealing with that on the shows we're watching them doing.
No, not at all.
You know, I'd like to see what they do because it's probably very similar. I mean, how do you get that far without being able to handle that?
Yeah, that's true. That's got to be one of the tools in the toolbox, I think, to be a
shut
successful
the fuck
comic.
up. I think they're probably laying that jerk thing on a little thicker potentially, you know, and like being like, I'm even more dislikable than you.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Pittsburgh?
I've been here since, I guess 3 shows now, so close to 3 years, I think.
Okay.
I moved right after the summer after all the vaccinations got out.
Okay.
So, yeah, what was that? That was 21, I guess I got
believe
here
so.
in August, and I've been here since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I asked you this on the show. This is a slight variation of what we're discussing.
Yeah.
But I always ask my guests, any paranormal experiences?
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that. I don't know personally, but I'm into that shit.
Okay.
Like, I used to want to read scary stories, and my mom take us to the library. And then I figured out how to use the card catalog before, like, you know, the computers were in there. And I was like, oh, ghosts, right?
Yeah,
Wanted to find some scary. I ended up in the aisle with, like, the mysterious disappearances, and Bigfoot, and the UFOs. I'm, like, in 3rd grade. They must have thought I was, like, the freakiest motherfucker. I'd come out with, like, a stack of those books, take them home, crush them. So, like, you know, 2 things I think I was into. Like, one of them, my uncle lived in a haunted house in Delaware.
Okay.
And it's an old place, you know, like one of those like George Washington slept here colonial houses called the Penny House. And like everybody in the family would talk about like this girl Lucy that apparently used to live in the house. There's even a statue that he found that he put in there. He's like an antiques guy. He lived with a buddy of his, but they were just buddies, you know, back then. I think he met him in the war or something.
Okay.
Yeah, just buddies. Real good friends. But yeah, man, every room was done like an antique
hetero life
collection.
mates.
Well, yo, they had one room, and it used to be because it was a brothel, too. And I guess this is where the girls stayed.
Oh, you say it was a
something.
brothel?
It was a brothel at one point, like an inn, that kind of shit. I guess the lines were blurred black then. But yeah, he had one room, and it was decorated like a kid's room from like turn of the century with all these porcelain fucking dolls in it. Oh, my God, was it creepy. But yeah, like people would be like, oh, I felt somebody push me outside, or like, you know, just weird shit happening around the house, or they'd see the little girl out of the corner of their eye or something. But I don't know if any of that's like legit. That's just like Italians telling stories. They all want to believe that stuff. You know, we're all superstitious. Grandma's got like things she's always concerned about. The other one, though, is when I was during COVID, my girl was going through a postdoc, and we were living in Sleepy Hollow, which is like the most haunted place in the United States.
Where is Sleepy Hollow?
So everyone thinks it's in New England, but it's right outside of Yonkers, like in Westchester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it is wild. I did a YouTube like fake documentary when I was trying to like learn my mastering skills. And dude, like these meadows of like just flowers and stuff, but it's all got this weird vibe to it. And I went to every haunted site in the city and like filmed it while I was there. And there is like, I mean, the whole place, everywhere you go, there's some story, some spirit, some something walking around.
Do they lean into it too?
They lean into it, but not like Salem, where it's like almost like an amusement park. Like they're more into the history of their town.
Okay.
Like you get out there and there's a giant cemetery that's like situated into the woods. So there's the front of it, which is near this thing called Old Dutch Church. And there's graves of like people that inspired the characters from the story Sleepy Hollow, right, by Washington Irving. You can see his grave.
Okay.
And then there's like a potter's field. And if you don't know what that is, that's like if you didn't have enough money or you're a foreigner, they'd throw you all in one unmarked area. Mm-hmm. Apparently the horseman, some Hessian mercenary, is buried there. There was some woman they thought was a witch that lived out in the woods. I've been to like the site where her hut was. She was just some apothecary. Which is, she apparently grabbed like a rifle and fought in the Battle of White Plains, even though like people were like railing against her, like the preacher didn't like her. So, but everybody'd go out and get their medicine from her anyway, or mushrooms or whatever they were eating back then.
That's wild stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, like it's just you can walk through there and like you kind of feel vibes, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like standing on this spot where this lady was like making concoctions for people, or like this is where the bridge was where they say that he took the ride and got chased by the headless horseman. So like that whole story is that town. It's like highly accurate in that regard, and even some of the people are accurate, even if they don't have the right name. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like those Van Tassel family is like one of the families in the book. You can see a row of Van Tassel graves there.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's like it's crazy. Like and yeah, I made fun of it all. bunch of rich New Yorkers in there too. A lot of industrial people. Like I think Andrew Carnegie's got his grave there.
Oh,
Nice little cross, and then you go to the Rockefellers. It's like this mausoleum. It looks like fucking pyramid or something. So it's crazy.
you had mentioned Bigfoot and cryptids.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
I do too. I've had a few Bigfoot guys on here.
Okay.
A couple other paranormal investigators. I love all that stuff. Have you ever? I don't want to say seen, but been around the hushes of the cryptid community.
Like, oh, totally. Like, I'm always reading about that stuff, but I feel like they got a breakdown for my logic a lot of the time. Like, they give me all this good stuff that I think the scientific community just isn't asking. And you're like, cool, that's like really good questions, right? Like things that, like, if you don't know answers to, you don't know answers to, Like, I'm kind of like agnostic with everything. I'm like, you show me some shit, and then, like, if you don't have a way to measure it, cool, we'll stop there. But they never seem to stop there. Like, all of a sudden, it's like, well, the only logical conclusion is aliens. I'm like, no, there's like a lot of things we could be talking about.
They make
like,
leaps.
before we start jumping. Like, I love the whole, like, ancient civilization stuff, too. That's another one of my, like, I like reading about them for real. And then I'm like, what else was going on? Like, there's just so much interesting shit. And it's like, did you have that much more time on your hands to be doing amazing shit? Or was there something else happening? But, like, I don't feel like I got enough to say what the fuck was happening.
That's
like,
fair.
I don't know if there's like aliens coming down impregnating people with ideas, and then all of a sudden we're building structure. It just seems like a little. There's too much to fill in the holes for that for me.
The biggest beef I have
I'd love it.
with the cryptid community
Yeah.
is, and primarily like Facebook groups is my
Okay,
experience with it.
you're rolling around there.
Not trolling, just witnessing. Is
Trolling, I meant like more in like a fishing sense.
Yeah,
Like yeah.
Just
Sorry,
strolling around, seeing what's going on. They love to show photographs of like a broken stick or some bullshit, and they're like, obviously a Bigfoot stepped on this. It's like, what the fuck are you
A
talking
moose
about?
doesn't have the diameter, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, but they like do the geometry, but they don't do the physics. It's like there's always like something where you actually take it to scientists, and they're like, I mean, we're missing like
Or they'll show
a
a
lot of
photo
the data here
of like a discoloration in the woods or
my
something,
God.
and they're like, look at that Bigfoot. And it's like
he was marking
shadows
his
never
territory with
exist.
his scent glands on his
There's
tree.
trees and animals, but shadows don't exist. Nothing's a bear.
It might be fungus, and you just don't know about fungus.
And no Bigfoot hunter or cryptozoologist
that's
has
what it is.
ever taken a photo of a bear. It's all been Bigfoot.
No, well, I mean, everybody's got bears, but no, I feel you. Yeah, that's where it just too many gaps in like the premise to conclusion. And I think that's like true across the board for these cats, like in ufology, in paranormal. And I love all that shit. And like, I'm like, if you gave me evidence, I'd be like, of course.
Yeah, I'll eat it up.
Of course I bought it.
I'll
Like,
eat
I
it
bought
up.
it back then, but like, I'm not going to be like, your evidence is evidence because it doesn't look like evidence to me.
It's where
You know?
sober work really comes into play, because
Yeah.
they'll have a thought and then an answer, and like you said, the answer is like fucking aliens.
Yeah.
Or some
But
Norse
to get
god.
to that thought, they did such good work. That's what kills me.
It's like this.
It's like
doesn't
once I
look
don't know
like-
what to do anymore,
This
I'm
doesn't
like,
look like any droppings of any animal that's been in the region for the
that's
last
good.
100 years.
You could run with that.
It's clearly aliens dropping
Okay,
off Bigfoot.
take some pictures, send it to the Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get in there, taste it. No, you got to know what's going on.
I
right?
love it though.
Yeah,
I love it though. Still,
It's the best. And I mean, my buddy dropped on me. He actually reminds me a lot of you. His name's Brian Scatasti. He's an illustrator from back home. But when his uncle passed, he comes over to my house. He's got this manila envelope, and it's filled with UFO magazines from the 50s through the 70s.
Oh,
God, I love going through that shit. The letters, it's a whole different vibe back then.
I do miss the time before the internet. Not saying it was better, but like
It's
it
got
was
a charm
more
to it.
interesting.
Yeah.
because people just said shit,
Yeah.
and then you just believed them.
And then there was
Whatever.
magazines.
Yeah,
So like, not only are you getting that, you're also getting the ads,
yeah.
which is like
Like
people are buying this shit. And it's like, yo, what was the UFO community into? Check out those ads.
yeah.
You know?
Just something simple, and not to over sexualize anything, but your older cousin could be like, "Don't have sex on top, or you'll get pregnant." And you'll be
You'd
like,
be like, "Oh,
"Oh,
shit."
that's law.
Oh, totally.
That's what it
Totally.
is. Oh, I can't have boys. Blah blah blah."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Because
We
I
eat
eat
yogurt.
grapefruits.
Yeah,
this morning.
exactly. Yeah.
No, that's not how shit worked. But people would just tell you stuff,
And
you
like
just run with
Italians
it.
are all about that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like my grandma, oh no, it's a dead bird. Go inside.
You know,
Your sister's pregnant. She can't look at it.
if there was a bird in
like,
the house
yeah.
growing up, that meant someone was going to die.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Someone in our family was going to die. We weren't too superstitious about a lot, but there was quite a few things.
Yeah, they pick up on the signs. Like everything means something if you noticed it.
Oh, yeah.
So they're always like looking for what that's all about. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one that got, like the first time I really experienced that with my grandmom was like, my brother's laying on the floor watching TV, and I walk over him to get somewhere, and she like loses her shit. Stop! She's like yelling in Italian in her dialect. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And my dad's like, you got to walk back over him the other way. And she's like making the sign of the cross. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, it didn't understand. And she's like, he won't grow if you do that. In English, like perfect English all of a sudden. Like she couldn't think in English. She was so worried. So like, just freaking out. So like little shit like that, or like to be like, don't do this, or it'll like, don't let the cats in the room because it'll breathe the baby's soul out, like they say in Sopranos. Yeah, they're worried about that.
I've heard that nonsense. Don't sit too close to the TV; it'll ruin your eyes.
Yeah, I mean that one's like just common sense to them.
If
they're
you
more
touch yourself
concerned
too
about
much,
magic.
you go blind.
Yeah.
I imagine Stevie Wonder had a hell of a childhood.
Hairy palms.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, a bunch of wild stuff. I kind of miss it, but it was counterproductive to the real world.
Yeah, I love it though. There's a way to look at it, I think, right? Like, is it future telling, or is it a way to get your head to observe your universe consciously, right? Like if you were to look at your horoscope, you could sit there and be like, this is going to happen to me today. Mm-hmm. Or you could be like, hey, I'm going to read these things and kind of pay attention to some cycles in my life, whether they're true or not. It's going to force me to focus in on an area. And then I can attack that area seasonally, or when I'm feeling like a vibe for a certain amount of time, or have that imposed on me. And I think like that part of it can be healthy and cool because it could be routine and it can force you to be introspective. Mm-hmm. But when you start thinking it's real in your life, or thinking it might be real without evidence, that's where I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, pray all you want, but for you to presume that it's working, that's kind of like, I don't know. You think you're on that level with whoever you're praying to, where you could say that's working or not?
That's
I don't
fair.
know, the action is more important, I think, than the result or like where it's coming from. So I think you can take any of that shit as long as you don't get too deep and think it's like, I don't know, for real rule in your life.
That is another consequence of the internet, is that you now can easily get too deep. There's so many things that have so many like just deep subcultures that I never would have thought, even with the basics of fish or like classical singing.
Oh, dude, I had to find them all when I make my videos because you're like, who's going to watch this? And then you find out it's like, oh, all these people are watching this. They're just over here.
I have watched so many videos of cows getting their hoofs
I get a lot of those.
That I feel like I could repair a cow's hoof right now.
I could do it.
I'm like, look at the crack right there and the white lining.
So you ever listen to Dan Carlin?
No.
His Hardcore History, you heard of the podcast?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
So he was talking about people of the steppes and like, the domestication of the horse, and that was like state secrets. So like when you think about like that shit, like when people start employing that, like the guy who's doing that and teaches somebody else, he's figuring it out like you're figuring it out on YouTube by himself.
Yeah.
And then you're like, we can't tell anybody this shit. Like, we're the horse people, and that's that. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, that's your department of like defense is like, instead of the engineering department and Mr. Scott, it's the foot scrapers.
One of my favorite shows growing up was Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, I love it.
You triggered
a
memory.
Yeah.
There was a guy who like was a horse whisperer that was like
classic.
Shunned out of his town because everybody wanted to like whip the horses into shape,
and you can't whip them.
And he would let them run, and then like talk to them, and eventually train him or break him or whatever. And I just, it's wild to what people think, and especially when you're indoctrinated into certain approaches.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been working. It just could work better, or it could work better for the team. Like, I think that was a tough part about the fish industry because they've been doing this. They're like one of the first unions ever in France. Was like the Fishmongers Guild. So, like, they got a way of doing shit that's always been that way, and they don't like hearing about other ways because, like, and there's no other, fish people doing it smart. They're all on the same page a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So, like, getting, like, new ideas for sales and marketing sometimes is like, Millie, why don't you just go out there and, like, hold a sign? And you're like, because your chef's sitting on the toilet with his phone. And they're like, yeah, but he's sitting there with my magazine, too. And you're like, no, he's not. I see him. I'm talking to him when I'm on the toilet on break, asking him how his product is. I'm telling you, he's scrolling that thing and he needs to wash his fucking hands.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. You can get entrenched, but I mean, hey, when you get so far, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's like, well, of course this works.
yeah, yeah.
It is working.
It changes just so hard.
Yeah, dude, they're tough. They're
Change
tough.
is difficult.
And especially when you got people who've been doing it that way and pioneered that way their whole life, and you're like, oh, your shit's it built us here, and they don't see it that way. They see it like you're trying to take away the method that like is like our culture.
That's funny you mentioned that. I have 2 daughters.
Yeah, I saw that. You got a new daughter, right?
And a 3-month-old.
Yeah.
And I posted a picture yesterday. It said something like, "This fatherhood stuff is so rewarding, top notch." And it was just a picture of me and the littlest one.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah.
And Stephanie, my girlfriend, goes, "Well, you didn't say you act like you don't blah blah." I said, "I didn't say anything."
It was about you. It was about the kids.
Retracting from Delilah.
Yeah, dude.
I didn't say I love this one more
Yeah.
or she's great. I just said it's dope. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's so many people I think look at
Well, she just had the
something-
kids. She wants you to thank her for that.
Yeah.
They all do.
That was a rough pregnancy.
Oh,
She had
yeah, I heard.
hyperemesis for all 9 months.
Oh, dude,
Couldn't keep nothing down.
that sucks.
It was miserable. Love her to death, but
buddy
it
of
was a
mine.
rough time.
She was not having a good time of it, and the only thing she could eat was McDonald's.
Okay.
So like one of the mothers was like, "Do you want me to pick you up a salad?" She's like, "You better fucking listen to me. I can't eat a fucking thing with these fries." It's like it's just lost her shit.
The point, though, I think, is people no longer read and digest what something is said when they look at things with, and not saying negatively, but a mild agenda. They translate and remove from what you actually said to try and create something new. And I wish that would stop.
Oh,
Like
totally.
if I say Monster is great on Facebook, I'll have 10 people saying, "Well, Rockstar is better," or "Why do you hate Red Bull?"
We
It's
like teams.
I didn't say that.
We like to organize into teams. There was a study I think I saw that like showed that. I'm trying to remember exactly how it worked. It was like a you give someone you could get $1 or you give someone $1 like
Pass it off, yeah.
Oh no, here's what it was. So like
Well, the Stanford prison experiment showed that too. Once you're individualized in a group,
Yeah.
and this is your group and this is your group, it was within a day that they were all volunteers.
Yeah.
Some were made guards, some were made inmates.
Right,
It was
right.
within a day where like the guards were treating the inmates like human garbage.
Well, like this one was even it was like how you get there. So like they were due a bunch of questions. I think they were like unrelated. Like don't quote me on this. You'd have to look it up. And like they would suggest, oh, you must like Monet. And all of a sudden people would be in that Monet camp, and like they would create some questions where like, you might be supporting the Monet people that you get along with, even though you've maybe never seen a Monet, so like people were kind of gravitating toward like identities that they were given to, right? So like, if Rockstar is your brand, there's other Rockstar people out there you got to look forward to, look after. So it's like this, like, you got to join a team. And I'm not that guy, unfortunately. So I got a hard time out there.
Yeah. No, I get that.
I don't like buying into any like ideologies. I'm very like blank slate with it if I can be.
I feel like I've
People
done
call me
myself.
devil's advocate, but I'm just like, I want to just look at it all, and like I want to be humble enough to say I don't know.
I think I've done
I
myself
want to.
a disservice being too stagnant with that thought process,
How
because
so?
there's so many things that I just wouldn't even entertain looking at or trying because they were popular at the time. And then, and then later on in life, I go check something out. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I'm like,
this is pretty nice.
in the moment, like Game of Thrones. I was like, oh, it's a time waster. Fucking love Game of Thrones.
See, I've never watched it, but I've done that with shows like this.
Yeah, totally. I know what you're saying.
Like it's.
I think I'm less aggressive about why I'm not watching it. For me, like TV is kind of like a background thing, where I keep it running, or I get real entrenched in one thing.
Well, the tribalism,
Yeah, dude.
it gets to a point where you can't even enjoy something without someone coming up to you trying to either explain all this backstuff. Look, what if I like a green and black can? I don't care how the company was formed. I don't care about the actors in the background.
Like, why is it why can't the green and white can people be like super happy about their green can and like not bring it to me?
It's like,
and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I want to go check out that. I think it's more effective that way. It's like, we're having this green pan party. Can I join the party? Instead of like, yo, fuck that yellow can party. We're all in the green can party now. Like,
it's like the meme that are as like, oh, you like Leonard Skinner? Name 3 songs. It's like, who cares? What if I just like one fucking song?
You know what they call this? Is a philosophical idea called ethical dualism.
Okay.
Okay.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, like, and we're seeing it, obviously, with the elections, too. Because, I mean, when you see a 50-50 split. So, like, what that really leaves room for, good, bad, right, wrong, or doesn't leave room for is all of a sudden, like, you have two sides. And, like, those sides can't see anything else because there's only two sides. So, like, they're inherently morally wrong by being on the other.
And if you're in the
And
middle
we
ground,
love co-opting, so all of a sudden it's like every fucking radical on the right and left is now either Republican or a Democrat. So what do? You get a 50-50 split. No one can be right because, I mean, there's only two sides. I miss Ross Perot, not because I want him elected, but because I want to see people change policy again and have discussions so that, like, you know, they're a little more afraid of our vote. But yeah, I think across the board with that, with branding, that's the one that really kills me. I mean, Disney fucking owns everything. All you're doing is paying them a tax like the goddamn Vatican so you can watch a superhero movie. I loved Marvel and Star Wars growing up.
I think they're doing a phenomenal job.
I mean, great, but like at the same time, it's like, hey, I love my Stan Lee. I love Joe Quesada growing up. I love that like way of like seeding things to the artist to create. And yeah, they make an awesome movie, but there's a ton of people going on a pilgrimage down there who don't do any other vacation. Like, go to fucking France.
Yeah.
Eat a flounder meunière. And even if you don't like it, you could say you did it. You know, like go to Tunisia. There's so many places you could go so cheap. And I'm jealous because I can't afford to go to those. And I see these people dragging their kids down to where, you know.
Disney World is expensive.
It's unfucking believable. It is a pilgrimage. And yeah, I think they co-opt, you know, ideas the same way the Roman Empire co-opted religion. It's like, let me get every one of your myths under one umbrella and like, this is canon now.
Big Disney, I'm still on your
Big
side.
Disney, baby. Council of Trent. Represent.
Big Disney, give me some money. I'll work for you. I mean, support you fully.
I put on so many Disney shows. It's my bread and butter.
Okay.
Like, but yeah, I mean, the same thing with an Amazon or something, right? It's all just consolidating under different umbrellas now. I think COVID sealed the deal on a lot of that for restaurants, things like that. People are concerned with keeping Bed Bath & Beyond open. I'm like, I go up to Cranberry. There's not a single fucking family-owned business on the whole strip.
No, there's not up there.
Everything up there is like China. And I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at? They can't even pay the rent in their own businesses.
Jason's Deli, Panda Express.
What's going to fill those holes once Amazon owns everything? It's just going to be a bunch of broken windows in a strip mall, and then you're going to go to a nice school next door to that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the only thing left is factories that they can put into those spots once the retail's out. So, you know, I don't know. I don't like the consolidation of ideas too heavily. You need it for progress, but there's a balance that I think we're really seeding away right now, and I think it's creating that 50-50 split on everything from, like, your favorite bologna to, like, you know, who you want for president.
Yeah.
You know?
People die on hills that don't give a fuck about.
Yeah.
I'm Oscar Mayer all day. Who gives a shit, bro?
Oh, fucking Christ.
Who
yeah.
gives a shit?
Like, Oscar Mayer's looking out for you.
Oscar Mayer's like, Tim's on our side. We fucking got this.
Yeah.
So you got some projects coming up?
Yeah, I do. Right now I'm directing Grease with my school, so I'll say it. They're pretty chill there. I'm at Batavia Studios up in Cranberry.
Okay.
So, you know, we're going to be putting on a production of Grease with they're all beginners for the most part, and they are killing it. They're doing fantastic work. They've come really far, and I think, like, if you got a family and want a good night out, it's a good time.
Okay.
We just did Clue. And the other thing I've been working on actually came from, you ever see the Pittsburgh Nerd Night?
I have not.
So they do like a comedy kind of TED Talks. They're pretty quick, like 20 minutes. And they brought a bunch of us from Steel City out for one of them. And I did like a funny lecture on music theory, like what's rhythm, what's pitch, how does this stuff actually work? So like if you never had any experience, could kind of start getting some and maybe write some music if you wanted to, or just listen to your music a little differently. And that's available on their YouTube. I put it on my playlist too through my comedy stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a quick run of it, so there's some stuff I'd like to change, but I think overall it's a really good set, and I'm looking to kind of condense that, possibly even do some video work with it. But I think that 20-minute show could easily be 45, and I like this idea of being like a weird Bill Nye of music and being able to be like, yeah, you were curious, like, here's where you go. This is not a mystery. It's still like math. It's a field. You can like learn it and do it and spend your time doing that instead of worrying about what baloney you like, you know?
I like that.
Yeah.
Bill Nye of music theory.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I always like that stuff, like where you could be a little, curse a little more. But
yeah. Okay.
I want it to be fun. I want it to be like, hey, like this doesn't have to be super elevated or mysterious, and hopefully people listen to more interesting music because of that.
Well, where can they find your shows? Like
Everything I do is on PaulieStags.com. Yeah,
Okay.
Paulie. You can get to my YouTube from there, my Instagram. YouTube's got a lot of like the little sketches and stuff I did, a couple stand-up sets, and then this nerd night thing. And then, if you're looking at my voiceover demos, it's all there. I don't want it to be all easy to get to from one place.
Okay.
So, yeah. But I got all the different social medias.
Have you done voiceover work?
I've done
didn't
some.
touch on that too much.
Yes, I've done my demos and I've edited people's voiceover a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And then I did a lot of this work with podcasting back in Philly. So, yeah, I'm pretty experienced with it, but I don't really gig a lot, honestly.
How does one get into voiceover work?
People tell you should do radio, and then you listen to them. I think for me it was I have all this knowledge of audio editing, but the resources to be recording bands and things are either out of my grasp or I'm not as interested, or there are people better at it. Mm-hmm. And I found that being able to do it with voices, it was an easy thing for me to figure out. Like it made sense, and I just kind of went into that. And I was like, cool, I have a voice for this. I got acting skill. If I don't have to pay somebody to do my production work on top of that, and I could produce other people's, that's probably a place I should focus my attention.
Okay.
So it's kind of like what can I do to perform during COVID kind of thing was the real question. So I picked up a couple little gigs, but I ended up making more money doing editing for other people who were maybe doing a long corporate training. Mm-hmm. And they were like, I got so much on my plate with this thing. I need someone to just do the cuts and everything for me and make it sound good. And I was like, I can do that. And it'll take me a lot less time. So cool.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that and video. And I do a lot of voiceover like for the shows. Like if there's a TV that's talking or something like that, I'm doing my, Captain Kirk impressions and shit. And sorry, I've been watching a lot of Star Trek. I know I keep throwing I'm not like a Trekkie. I'm just on a kick right now, man. It's making me happy.
Hey, it's all good.
Yeah. So
you asked me if I watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I actually introduced it to Stephanie, and we ran through the whole series.
Oh, dude, that's
Just
the neighborhood I was
within the last
living
2
in,
weeks.
was those areas in
Oh,
South
really?
Philly. Yeah. Lumber bars everywhere. Oh my, they're just like it. I mean, there's some real wild motherfuckers that've been there forever that are just
I've
out
been
of their
in Philly a
goddamn
couple
minds.
times.
Yeah,
Interesting
yeah.
place.
It's fun. I liked it. It's one of my favorite cities, man. But it's wild. There's some shit. The reason I like it so much is like some of the awful shit that like couldn't happen anywhere else.
That's fair. Before we get out of here,
dude.
Anything else you want to bring up? Anything you want to promo? You want to talk about?
I mean, that's my big stuff right now. And then if you see my name on any shows, come see me. But you know
Absolutely.
what? We're talking about food. I got 2 banger videos on my YouTube. If you want to learn to make pasta sauce like my dad does, the way they make it back in his town in Gaeta, where his family's from, and if you want to make your own pasta, I got 2 full cooking videos on there that have been doing pretty decent.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I can always do more decent.
Always
Yeah,
good.
dude. Yeah, if you're looking for a good Sunday sauce, you don't want it to look purple, you don't know what to do with your meats, come check it out. I'll let you know.
Well, I tell you what, thank you
Thanks for having me out, man.
for
This
coming
was
to
fun.
the program. This has been
pleasure.
great. PaulieStags.com.
Yeah.
Guys, check him out. Check him out for some music stuff, some comedy coming up. Very interesting guy.
Thanks.
I don't got much else. It's been a wonderful show. Tune in next week. Thank you very much.
Groovy.
This is the Inquisitive Minds Podcast.